Hey guys, we are going to talk today about something we're calling it After the Snow. Welcome to After the Snow, what comes next, right, with the winds of winter and a dream of spring. I'm one of your hosts, Chloe. You may know me from Girls Gone Canon, where I host a POV by POV reread podcast. We are currently we just finished Sam, and we are starting the prologues up next. So if you haven't downloaded that last Sam episode, pop that for your drives home.
And I'm another one of your hosts, Eliana. That's not me. If only I wish she was here. And I wish my co-host Jeff was here. I'm Emmett. I host a Nauticast podcast with Jeff, a.k.a. Brendan Beefish. He's taking a couple months off now because he's coming back for some work overseas, and he's just spending a little time with his family. So on my own, I'm going through Lord of the Rings and Star Wars right now, and then we're going to jump back in. We're like a third of the way through A Storm of Swords. We got next up the Sansa chapter where she gets married to Tyrion. So that'll be a fun, cheery chapter to get everybody reintroduced to it.
Yeah, say no to the dress. Say no. Well, I know Jeff will love that. He loves Sansa chapters, so.
Exactly. His favorite Stark.
Yep. Best Stark. If only he were here to talk about the best Stark. I guess let's talk about the North, right? I think that's going to be some of the big stuff in Tulao and A Dream of Spring there, right?
And as we all know, your very objective and nuanced takes on the House Stark is what exactly?
I mean, my biggest speculation is that Starks win-ish, right? Like, everything's still going to suck for them, but they're still going to be the only ones that, like, have any survival of the main areas. We got, like, the Battle of Ice. I don't care much about the Battle of Ice. I know you have great ideas about it. I don't think about it that much. Because you think about it for me, actually. It's kind of...
That's my job.
You know, you just can't think about everything in a Song of Ice and Fire.
In marriage.
What about Ramsay? What's going to happen there?
It's interesting to consider because I feel like one of the reasons that you have this battle being set up, the Battle of Ice, with the phrase going out to the lake where Stannis is camped right now, and that's not a fight that would actually decide the control of Winterfell, and maybe the reason that there's a battle being set up there is because dealing with Winterfell won't actually be a battle, because Ramsay's going to mess it up so poorly that it doesn't actually come to a straight fight. I do think Ramsay's going to kill Roose. I know that was part of some scenes in the show, Season 6, where it seemed like things were happening without consequences or without much thought into them, so that sometimes gets lumped in with that, but I do think it makes total sense for Ramsay's character in the same way it made total sense for Tyrion's character. If anything, it's amazing that Ramsay's waited as long as he has to kill his dad, given how much contempt the dude has for him. There's the bit in Dance when Roose is telling Ramsay, like, some charming line, like, do this before I regret the day I raped your mother and raped you into existence, and Ramsay's just about to go for him, and now Walda's pregnant, so I think Ramsay might kill Roose and then have everything fall apart on him, because no one actually wants to follow Ramsay or stick around, so Northern Lords might jump ship at that point. What do you think?
Well, especially when you bring up, like, Winterfell, and its destruction, and how they have a little bit of rebuilding going on. I mean, Ramsay obviously knows that he probably can't rule there, right? So why not destroy it all? Why not just...
He's already done it once.
Yeah, he's done it once. Then we see a lot of that, I guess, in the story, echo-wise, right, of, like, people, like, when they realize they can't actually have what they really want in the story, they just destroy it. So no one can have it. All right, Bastard Bull, right? Bastard Bull. Bastards versus bastards. Is Jon going to really be alive in time for that? Because I don't think he's going to be alive in time for that.
Probably not, but Ghost is going to be sticking around. Maybe Ghost has something to do with Ramsay at that point.
He has a healthy appetite.
With a sword in his mouth, leading the army.
Yes!
Yes.
Growling fiercely around the sword, just inching into people.
Ghost Chihuahua chapters are going to be so good. They're like, woof, 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 woof.
Ghost versus Ramsay's dogs would be a thing. Wasn't there a note from George, like, towards his, wasn't there a note from George with regards to Ramsay's dogs and the wolf pack eventually being a thing?
Yeah, he actually wrote in the episodes he was going to write for season 4, wasn't it? He was planning to, like, have some stuff about the wolf pack versus him come in. Yeah, and that got cut. But sad trombone. But it's interesting because that to me says that he really does mean to use them in the future and have a big, like, battle between them, maybe. Maybe Ghost will get his own pack. Maybe it won't be Nemeria's. Maybe he'll find some wolves out there.
Maybe Ghost turns the dogs and makes them into his friends and takes down Ramsay.
That would be nice. I really... the bad show did a lot of things bad, right? But they did like a handful of good things. They really did. This is being recorded shit, but
Can never take it back.
you guys got to take that one to your grave.
Broad strokes, though, I agree. I do think Jon's going to wind up king in the North. I think that's the logical kind of climax of the Northern stuff in T-Wow.
He's going to be pissing a lot of people off by accidentally taking their claims, huh?
Interesting how that works out. Yeah, he'll be a compromise candidate because Sansa's right there. She'll probably help out with the Knights of the Vale, but we can't have a girl in charge of the gruff, masculine North where everyone has long beards and muscles, and they simply can't tolerate that for long.
I mean, beard care is kind of really important, and I think that a lot of them could use her help with that, so...
Honestly, the
Oil it
Youngers
off,
need a little self-care
train
session, that's
it.
true.
Yeah, don't get me started on the Glovers.
So they might incline towards Jon for that reason. There's Stannis is right there, but nobody likes him, so
Yeah.
that's going to pose an issue. And you can't have Rickon because he's still on timeout for biting people. So he's got to stay in his room until
He's
he's
a
a good
really
lord.
harsh exile.
But what's going to go down with that? Do you think? Because that seems like a joker in the deck, or a wild card with Rickon and Davos going off to rescue him.
Two very strong, semi-conflicting
Oh,
opinions. So, kind of, I don't know.
That's kind of opinions, the conflicting kind.
One, it is probably a shaggy dog story, right? Like, we've all talked about that forever, but emotionally, and after going through Davos's POV chapters right in a row, you can see that Rickon is the next Edric, right? He spirited Edric away and freed him from the confines of what was going to happen to him in Westeros if he stayed for having king's blood. Rickon is the same thing. He's being asked to bring Rickon back by Manderley, and as badass and awesome as the North remembers speeches and everything going on there, Manderley really doesn't have good, it's a boy lord. He wants him back so that he can maintain control of the North, which is better out of Bolton's, right? But it's still, in the end, it's like, you're using him for his claim, a puppet kid, like Aegon III, And there's actually something that I've been thinking about is that Davos spiriting him away, and maybe he stays. Maybe when he gets to Skagos, maybe Davos leaves him there and saves him in that way. Because I really think that we've seen a lot about Skagos in the books that is totally bullshit. They're all raging cannibals, and they do their blood sacrifices and dance around piles of bones. But that's actually, there are a lot of cultures that they have that same exact stigma surrounding them, and that's not actually what it's about. Very religious, very different things. Cannibalism, as Eliana, if she were here, would say, is actually a very religious and spiritual thing in some places. She also would go on to be like, I think we should do it, but we're not gonna, I wouldn't. I think that Davos will see, he's probably in good care there. Osha probably is really taking care of him still, hopefully. Or, not. We don't know.
Probably more so than Littlefinger's taking care of Sansa, or the Faceless Men are taking care of Arya. He's probably relatively better
Or
off.
the Night's Watch taking care of Jon.
Oh, they took care of him. They took great care of him.
Nice frozen cell for him. But yeah, I love that idea because it fits with Davos and Edric, and it fits with what happened to Davos in the North, where everyone thinks he's dead now, but he's not, and that might be exactly what he ends up pulling with Rickon. Is letting people think he's dead.
And I think there's something of that too, of this idea of these monomythic figures, right, of the Starks. Each of them are having almost a broad outline of the monomyth of one day you might hear of a Stark king that was on, Skagos, and he had, a wolf.
His ferocious
wolf, and he led armies on Skagos. Think of the Age of Heroes. That's something you would read from the Age of Heroes, right? And it's these are the new heroes. These are going to have the new long-run stories. But there's also something in Fire and Blood that stuck out to me with Aegon III and Viserys, too. Aegon III and Viserys, they get whisked into hiding on the SS Gay Abandoned Doot Doot, right? And they get whisked away to Pentos, but they get attacked and they get split up. Aegon has his dragon, so he escapes. Viserys stays, and he has to pose kind of as a common boy, a shit boy, and make his way through. And eventually, a bunch of stuff happens, and Alan Valerian, Oakenfist, a very, very famed traveler, right, 6 times to sea, being an account of the great voyages of Alan Oakenfist, basically a Davos-esque character, is actually who brings Viserys 2 back to King Aegon III, the sad boy whose family was, eaten in front of him and died, and now he suddenly is the king, the boy king. So their reunion, maybe we will see Rickon. Maybe Davos will bring Rickon back and reunite him with King Bran, or Bran, whether he's in the north or in the south eventually. I would love to see that at the very end, that Rickon comes back at the very end if Bran is king in the south or something and they are reunited. That would be great.
And this very conveniently keeps Davos away from Stannis, so
very conveniently
all the last shenanigans can go down in that storyline. And I do think that Jon being king in the north ties into that, because I do think Stannis will probably win the Battle of Ice and survive against the Freys, but then get rejected, because that's what always drives the storyline, is not even losing battles, somebody just getting politically rejected. And so if they choose Jon over him, I think that might be what pushes him over the edge regarding Shireen.
Break before he bends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We see that probably go down at the Night Fort to fit with the Night's King sacrifice angle. Selyse and Shireen are already going to be set up there. So
Yeah.
that makes total sense. So we'll probably just see the end of that storyline and Davos kind of brought into the orbit of the Stark stuff. Not in the same way as in the show, but I think that'll probably be where Davos washes up in terms of which POVs are around him at that point.
I do think Davos might choose, too, to stay away. Like, maybe he'll hear things going on, and maybe he'll just go on his little side quests and not go back. Maybe he's like...
He could go back home and get involved in the Golden Company stuff.
Yeah, the Odysseus kind of theory, right,
Sure.
when it comes to him of, not coming back for Penelope, leaving her there in the Storm's End land with all the things happening around there, and Golden Company coming. I would love for him to go home to his wife, because...
I could see that being the end for him.
Go home to
last
your wife.
chapter. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like that too. That would be a great ending for him, though I do think it would be good to have him involved in, whatever democracy could come to King's Landing.
Sure.
To Westeros. That could be cool. He has a great mind for that, of like what's fair, what's not.
Absolutely. I like him as the modern hero relative to the monomyth stuff you were talking about, more descended from Odysseus than from Hector or Achilles.
Yeah.
But
Not
what
some
about
great hero, an
true.
adventurer.
what about the Riverlands? I know this, Lady Stoneheart's probably going to wipe out the Freys, and it's going to be like Arya, and she's probably going to have to mercy kill her mother and be very sad. But the main thing that people want to know are Jaime and Grim going to bone?
Yes. Duh. Oh my god. Absolutely. I actually think my big thought process there is that I think that when Brienne and Jaime get back to the Riverlands and they're like on the run from mommy, right? Because she's a little scary right now. When they're on the run from mom, I think Arya might be coming back at similar timing, right? Depending on how Bravo's travel back works and George's travelogues, I think Arya might come back at similar times. So wouldn't it be just so interesting if Jaime and Brienne are, off wasting some honor together? Push, I'm pumped. They're getting a little crazy, and it's going to happen. Come on. But if they're, Brienne, who is choosing kind of to take the honorable path for a lot of things, the first time she chooses to do something for herself, and Arya's busy having to put her crazed zombie mom down. Do you remember where the heart is? That could be real rough. And it could be really rough that, Brienne once more missed a Stark child. Where'd they go? Because I just don't think Brienne's going to find them. I think she'll go to them. Maybe she'll go to the north and see them. Who knows if that's really something she'll get to. Maybe she'll stay in the south. But I do think she'll meet them. But I don't think she's going to find either of them. I think they're going to find their way home, which feels like a little metaphorically important, right? That they get home on their own way and they kind of take some of that agency back that's been ripped from them as they've been cast out to all the different survival places and modes.
Davos strikes me as similar to Brienne in that regard, in that they've been secondary characters to other stories for so long, it is kind of hard to imagine what the specific climax for them would be. They might be left adrift and have to kind of circle the orbits of the main characters at that point. But yeah, so the Riverlands, Arya has to do the mercy kill. Well, it's like Friday the 13th, the camp counselors are busy having sex.
Yeah, exactly. That's
and the kids go through horrible trauma. But
that's actually just a song of Ice and Fire, I think.
Exactly. So Arya will probably mercy kill her mom after her mom wipes out the Freys, and that'll probably be where we leave the Riverlands. Just kind of who's even in charge at that point? If they, I guess if they free Edmure and use him as a figurehead.
Lord. Well, but if we get rid of all the Freys and bust him out, now he's a lord.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's with a Frey kid along the way.
Only half. Okay, it's only half bad.
Welcome to the world, little one. We wiped out your family.
The glass is only half Frey. I'm afraid not. There seems like there's something in it, though, that's the enmity between the phrase, I'm not a Walder Frey apologist. I want to put that out there.
Like some folks at the con.
Since I'm not a Walder Frey apologist, is prompting a lot of questions.
Sounds like something someone who's a Walder Frey apologist would wear. You're right. I'm not. However, in like slow reading Cat's chapters, you kind of see very quite obviously why he's like, I've been so screwed this whole time by your shit ass father, and I couldn't even just have one kid, like just one married off. The whole family wouldn't do it. And I mean, he didn't have to have all these wives and have all these kids. That could have been maybe done more responsibly, in my opinion. He has some land, but he doesn't have that much. Come on, like what are you gonna do? Inbreed half the nation to be Frey? That is kind of
That's why they show up everywhere. That's why they're in Derry and White Harbor and River
one
Run.
of
They
them.
need to get out, like way more worse at the beginning. Third son of a house with too many heirs.
Getting a Frey in the face.
Yeah. It's
got
like
laws and everywhere. So yeah, they probably won't be wiped out entirely.
maybe like you shouldn't have, slaughtered a bunch of people at a wedding. That was also maybe a little irresponsible. Poorly done. Poor taste.
Right.
But at the same time, though, like you
Worst
can
wedding
see
ever.
the build-up. You can see why. And I think like having Rosalind and Edmure, survive and actually have a cute little half Frey, half Tully baby. I mean, maybe that's a good thing. They could actually, like, House Frey could go on after Walder finally dies. He might actually kind of be poisoning the well there,
Ironically, he has a Tilly Frey kid after all.
Yep.
Exactly what he wanted the whole time.
Just had to die
in the
for
worst
it
way
finally.
possible. Exactly. All right. So what about the Vale? We're going to have Harry the Heir tragically shoot himself in the back of the head. How did this happen? Littlefinger says, kicking the gun behind the couch.
Yeah, that is a big one that's going to happen. And, there's in history, there's the Battle of the Seven Stars in the Vale that takes place, where the Andals versus the First Men, and the Andals are coming to conquer. And you have a lot of those same families that are still now in the Vale on separate sides, right? Littlefinger versus the Lords Declarant. A lot of the Lords Declarant come from First Men families. Littlefinger's side is almost all from Andal families. So it's kind of an interesting echo George is playing with in there. And Harry Harding is literally, it's in his name, Heir Dying. That is his name, Heir Dying. He is going to die. You don't introduce, just like Aegon, right? Like, do you really think Aegon Targaryen back from the dead is going to be alive in the last half of A Dream of Spring, anyone? We'll get to that. But it's the same thing. Like, Harry is introduced to die. I think it's going to be Lynn Corbray, personally, because the whole little exchange of the money, and Sansa watches it cleverly, and she's like, oh, I get it. I'm pretty sure we're going to have, like, almost, it's a redux of the first tourney, right, in Sansa 2, in A Game of Thrones, with the boy from the Vale dying, and she thinks there will be no song sung for him. That's sad. That's what it's going to be. It's a boy from the Vale dying.
A literal red herring.
A literal red and blue checkered herring. Bye-bye, Harry.
So, what do we got? Let's see. We got the Reach, of course.
Well, that's a reach.
My favorite character is Willis and Garland Tyrell. Speaking characters who will reign on and on forever into the sunlight.
Yeah, Garland's gonna die, honey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say.
The guys at once.
Yeah, you don't show that he's gonna be a badass unless you're gonna take him down and going against like 3 to 5 Ironborn.
It's 3 to 5 Ironborn.
Well, it takes that many. Garland's that good.
I think he could probably take on 20 or 30 of the Ironborn aren't very good. That's why they beat up on fishing villages. Victarian's idea of fighting is catching a sword in his hand.
Now, I don't know though, because the thing is, and this is actually from those books, thank you, we learned in Sam 5 as he gets to the Reach, like, they're coming inward harder, faster, stronger, better than they ever have. But they've never done like this. Like, they all say, like, we've had Ironborn Reavers out here. These aren't normal Ironborn Reavers. They're, reaping horrible destruction. I don't know. I feel like you have a theory that you've written about. You guys might know about this cute little sketch he's written about. It's called The Eldritch Apocalypse. Have you guys ever heard about that? You can probably do it a little more justice since he wrote it.
Naturally. And then it came true in The Forsaken.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah, Euron's coming in for the Reach with fire and blood and a bunch of weirder things besides. He's getting up to some insane, trippy blood sacrifice stuff out in the open water. And he's not the only one messing with crazy stuff going on in Old Town. You got the High Towers researching spells at the top of their titular tower. And you have Pate, friendly, ordinary, non-mysterious Pate. And you just covered the last Sam chapter in Old Town where he shows up at the end there. So what's going on with quote-unquote Pate?
I actually am curious about that. I'm very curious about that because you and I had this chat offline earlier about Pate, like, he wanted the book, right? He definitely wants that dragon book. He wanted that key to get that book on dragons, whether it's like they just want to kill the dragons, everyone's just vying for that. But he's still there. he hasn't left. So what does he want? What does he want? I think Sam knows, though. I think Sam can tell, because Sam feels a little off from the conversation and says he misliked him. So I'm wondering if that will be kind of an antagonist to Sam's plot up close. I also think when it comes to the Citadel, it's interesting. You have the high tower across, and then you have the Citadel described in such length. I'm wondering if Euron might take the Citadel as his post, because out front there's a weirwood described, right, as being bare, and the leaves are all barely there, and it's just the purple moss growing over the face, so you can't even see it. Which it kind of reminds me of the trees in Karth, right? The exact opposite weirwoods, the blue and black ones that make the shade of the evening. Mm-hmm. So kind of a Euron connection as well. But when Sam gets there are crows littered throughout this empty, broken-ass weirwood, right? This busted weirwood. And it makes you think of Bloodraven and Bran. But then, as you hear all this Ironborn stuff coming and how they're worse than ever, and no one's ever seen them be this dangerous, and all these villages that are burned down, makes you think that crow's probably representing Euron. I think he might rule from the Citadel and battle the High Towers, at the top of the Citadel Tower, the High Towers on top, magic back and forth. I think that could be pretty crazy. That's going to be a battle. They're going to lose, but that's going to be a battle.
Euron's talked about just having some tall tower from which to leap, kind of the opposite of what happens with Bran, where Bran is thrown from a tower, but Euron wants to jump and attain that godlike power any way he can. And of course, Sam brought that humble little horn with him all the way to Old Town, the only thing he held on to when he sold all else.
Yeah.
The little horn that he found beyond the wall.
What could it mean?
I love when Jon asks Tormund about the big horn that Mance had, and said it was the horn of winter, and Alessandra burned, and Tormund was like, yeah, we just found that shit, and said it was the horn, we thought that would freak you guys out, and Jon goes, oh, no.
Which, that's kind of...
That means the real deal's out there.
Yeah, that's a complete parallel then with the baby switch, too, with Mance's kid versus, burning one baby or not, depending on what happens.
The real horn went south, the real baby went south.
Absolutely. Yeah, they sent them... I think that might be a thing, that's the real horn, because that's the real baby.
I think for me that works as the potential climax for the book would be Euron blowing that horn and bringing the wall down. I think that would be great because Sam has the perfect connection for that he was beyond the wall and fought a White Walker and thought he was getting to the south and getting away from all this, and then he's just walking right back into the middle of it again.
So sad for Sam.
But he's going to be our POV on all that disaster, and the Tyrells getting involved to the extent that they do.
I mean, I think he's going to have to flee. I do think he's going to have to flee Old Town because...
Might run into his dad again that way.
I think that's the big thing to conquer, right? Randall is scarier than Euron to Sam, right? He's more afraid of Randall than he would probably be of Euron. Until Euron comes and, boils blood on the streets of Old Town or whatever. Raises his kraken, but...
Randall's... even when Sam fights the White Walkers, hearing his dad's voice in his head.
Yeah. I don't know. What the Reach is interesting. I think... it's going to have a lot of decimation because the Reach and the Vale are the only prosperous places left.
So they got to go.
So they have to go. We have to get rid of them. It's too late for them. But the Reach, at least. The Vale, no. I think the Vale might remain a little untouched, but we'll see. We'll see
about how Littlefinger's starving everyone plan works out for him.
Yeah, the Nega Tyrell plan.
Exactly.
Oh, it worked when they fed them. What if I didn't?
So speaking of the south, we also have Dorne, which... It's just everything is just going to continue to go poorly there. I look at Oberyn and Quentyn and Myrcella setting the pattern, just whenever they have plans down there, it seems to work so poorly.
I mean, you've written so well about poor Quentyn, and there's something about that arc, and there's something that Oberyn says. He says, the Dornishmen burn for Elia and her children. But, that's a literal line, because they keep literally doing that. They literally keep burning, and I think that's... Their whole plot is right? Their whole plot is and then they started to scream. We have the Sand Snakes moving to King's Landing, right? And they're all going to be on different missions. We have Nymeria in the front, being the leader and actually in the face and keeping King's Landing under her thumb as being on the Small Council, which that's just Oberyn 2.0, right? Because we had Oberyn come instead of Doran, and now Nymeria's coming instead of Doran, and we saw how that went with Oberyn, right? He kind of shook some things up. The Sand Snakes, though, you have Nymeria going there. The Faith, we have Tyene going to the Faith, right? We have Sorella already down south in Old Town, so that's a great place to have that. And then Obara is on the go with Hota, right?
And where are they headed?
They're going to a cute little place called Starfall. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, Starfall, with those Danes.
The who?
The Danes.
Never heard of them. Who are they?
They're this family, real mysterious, purple, shooting stars. They have like the dead chick. They have their brother who's also dead or whatever. The sword, you know. They have the big sword. Dawn. Those guys.
So it's like, yeah, what's going to come out of that plot? Because, you know, Darkstar, everyone's favorite character. Whatever happens to him, what do we get out of going to Starfall?
Ooh, we're talking Darkstar now. I think Darkstar is going to end up on Aegon's Kingsguard. I think that's a perfect place for him as kind of your Dark Arthur, right? Sort of the evening instead. I wonder... So Edric Dane is on the way back to Starfall.
Right, because he broke off from Stoneheart's Grove.
Yeah, there were those people that had morals or whatever. They're like, ooh, this is getting a little messy for me, Mommy. I can't go with you anymore. He left. They're on their way back. His little faction is. So who knows if he's going to reach that destination. But if you have Ario Hota and Obara going there, Dawn is there. George has said, and so Spake Martins, that Dawn is just waiting for the next person to come pull it out of the sword, the stone, you know, just brandish it around. Will it be Darkstar? Will it be Edric Dane? Edric's so young. I think that's a 5-year gap.
Right.
Suffering, right?
He would just fall over if he tried to pick that up.
Yeah, I think maybe he kind of wanted Edric to have been old enough for it by then to be a bigger character for it. I don't know what's going to happen with Dawn necessarily, but I do think that Ario Hota, I think Obara's going to turn on Ario Hota in a heartbeat. I think she's probably going to... It's bad news. It's not good. It's not looking good for Hota, which is very sad.
They're introduced just about to fight.
Yeah, they already had the tensions really, really hard, and obviously she boils her blood pretty well anyways with other people when they piss her off, but Hota he doesn't take any nonsense, and I think there's going to be a horrible fight, and I'm sure she will kill him, and I think she'll probably sow a little chaos in doing that. I'm not sure what her motives are going to be for that necessarily, but with her being kind of that in that area by the Marcher Lords, but also between Dorne, there could be some conflict there. You know, she could lead people to attack there. With the Sand Snakes going there, and Ariane, you know, she's eventually going to go towards upwards and meet with, you know, Aegon and possibly, you know, she's going to give the flag and say, yes, it's totally, now that she knows Quentin is chasing Dany, she's like, oh, this is a ticking time bomb. I got to marry this guy. She's going to marry him.
It's a real tragic setup because she's, in her released Winds chapter, she's just defending against the return of King Quentin at Dany's side, and we already know that she rejected him and then he caught on fire. So he's no threat at all. She can't smell the barbecue across the narrow sea, so she thinks he's still coming. And if she ever learns that he's dead and was never a threat in the first place, it's going to be too late. But in the meantime, I think she's probably going to tie Dorne's fate to young Grift. So that'll be up in the Stormlands. We already see her making her way to him. He's cultivating allies. They potentially have friends in the Reach. You think it's a unbroken string of victories ahead for Team Grift?
I think they're going to win-win. I have a few thoughts about King's Landing wrapped with that, right? Because
That's really
we have Myrcella coming back, right, to King's Landing with the Sand Snakes, or with Nymeria at least. They're going back. And it seems, we've seen a lot of Dorne, being obviously women rulers are accepted here, and going to King's Landing and trying to fool Cersei. I think that Nymeria is going to convince her to follow Dornish succession, because Tommen, kind of a lemon, right? Let's just put it out there. Maybe not her, she's like, ooh, you're pliable, but not the way I need you to be. Not old enough, and Marjorie is definitely going to start manipulating Tommen a little bit more and more as we go. Cats are one thing, and I'm just telling you, if you give me cats, that's same. I'm pliable, very pliable. Write notes down, everyone. Cats. Multiple. I think she's going to convince Cersei to just give up on Tommen and crown Myrcella instead. With Myrcella married to Trystane, does a couple things by having them try to legitimize that with Dany on the way, too. They're not out there of having a woman queen. We tried it once. It's not going to work out. We got to move on to the next one, the next guy. So I think they're going to do a King's Landing 2.0 sack, you guys.
But with reverse side, the Dornish were the victim of it the first time, and now they're going to be the army on the outside.
Which it's almost like Red Wedding 2.0, right? But
sure.
Like
with Stoneheart,
with Stoneheart there,
like little reversals.
But in King's Landing, and I think the Dornish are going to sack the hell out of King's Landing, and I don't think it's going to be a nice sack. I think it's going to be very brutal, especially if John Connington's there. Yeah. I mean, the goal was to kill the kids. I'm pretty sure that could happen. I think they'll be sitting very, very pretty Dorne at the very end of TWOW. I think they'll put down.
Right,
you know, we
Dany
had
comes.
we have Pycelle open the gates, right, and let in Tywin's crew to kill everyone. I think it'll be a reverse of that. We'll have them say, "Oh, it's just Trystane. Come to Mary Marcella. Let's let Trystane and everyone in," and they will drop the flag, the Targaryen and Dornish flag, and just crazy ballroom blitz, just knock it all out.
Varys was the one who tried to keep the gates closed the first time, and this time will probably be part of opening it. Because that's his boy.
Yeah, I would see that a big time. And I mean, it's easy without them. No, Cersei's going to be very busy doing many other things that probably do not matter, like at all.
Pissing people off, making them want someone else, which is just what went down with Stannis and Renly.
Yeah.
Like you had Renly, Young Griff is basically another Renly in terms of sweeping everybody up from the south. Probably end just as poorly with Dany playing the shadow baby role there.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to end well there. I mean, I think Arianne and Aegon are in for a bit of a toasty treat at some point because I don't think Dany's going to be very happy with what they've done with her city.
And that's what was really missing from the Dany-Cersei showdown in the show for me. Is it just doesn't make sense for Dany to feel rejected when Cersei's in charge because no one likes Cersei. No one's picking her over Dany. She's just a tyrant who's holding the city hostage. So there really isn't that emotional sting. With Young Griff, though, that's there because he's going to, as well as being like Renly, he's like Aegon II. He's got all the trappings of power, and he looks like a conventional monarch, and he knows how to say the right words. He'll probably have the sparrows at his back. That helps with getting the crowd on the side.
Yeah, with Tyene. She's infiltrated.
Probably Mace Tyrell's lords, he'll have some of them. So that has the potential, I think, to really get under Dany's skin, to show up at Westeros after all she's gone through and all she wants to do and see, oh, you already have one. You already have a Targ.
He just sits on the throne. He's just like, oh, I'll just sit here.
And he just got in their header, and I think that unfairness is something you're supposed to feel and understand and watch that, whatever that leads Dany to do, how that is the emotional core, which I think is a lot better than Cersei, because it's not like... Cersei would not make Dany feel unpopular by comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. Young Griff is like the biggest thing that was missing from the show. Like you just feel,
even if you don't dig him as a character or John Connington or think he's too late in the story, which people have said, I think structurally you need him there for Dany's story to work.
It's empty without. He plays he fills a role. He's filling a need, a service. The Mummer's Dragon.
Someone for the heroes to fight.
Exactly.
As they talked about in the House of the Undying stuff.
Yeah, someone for the heroes to fight.
And that's what he is. But so I agree that he'll have a red carpet really rolling out for King's Landing. We'll get everyone on his side. And then,
the Targs are back! Hooray!
We got one. And then Dany. So so then that leads us over eastward.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, broad strokes make sense for Dany to get the Dothraki together like she did in season 6. Gather what allies she can and then push westward. But there's a lot of specifics that I think are going to could fill out her arc much more completely. You got the Red Priests over in Essos now, over in Volantis. It would be interesting because Melisandre's basically a lone wolf, and so is Thoros, the ones who meet over in Westeros, and then in Dance we get to meet the actual establishment of R'hllor and the foundational church of it. And they're talking Dany up as their Messiah, so she could acquire herself a new religion there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks badass, right? But to other people, it may not look so badass with the armies coming over of very, very different people from different cultures. I do think that, I'm not sure how the end of Slaver's Bay is going to go. We've read a little bit already from the TWOW sample chapters. If you haven't read them yet, you're so brave. Oh my god, I'm weak. I am so weak. I won't survive the winter. The second post one, I was like, I have to read it.
All in.
I have to read it 10 more times just so that it feels like a book. I just want to feel something again. I don't know how Victarion and Victarion's life's it's over. Poor Victarion. He's probably not coming back from the east. But with Tyrion and a lot of what Tyrion's role could be with Dany, of what he knows already of Aegon, what he's kind of seen him do, being able to tell her, oh, he's just a spoiled brat. We played chess that one time and he just knocked it over. He knows already kind of their plan in Westeros. And I think Tyrion he's like, yeah, go kill my family for me and then I'll come in and I have the throne again. Cool. Except that'll hurt. Right?
That's a big distinction for sure, that Tyrion has that info, that he'll be the one to tell Dany in all likelihood about young Griff, and I think he can very easily spin that as like, yeah, he's not actually your nephew. They tricked him up and he's taking your spot. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, and that leads also into the stuff that was kind of brushed up in the show, which is Illyrio. And the role of Pentos and all this. Because he was very important at the start of Dany's story. He comes up throughout, Tyrion meets him, but he turns out to be sponsoring young Griff, who might well be his kid. So I think that could be a big turning point for Dany when she learns that. And Pentos is probably her last stop in Essos, because it's right next door to King's Landing. It brings her full circle. So Tyrion might unleash her on Illyrio and then young Griff.
I have a feeling he might tell her that truth, or half-truth, depending on how he spins it, right, for his own personal gain, or for manipulation purposes. But I think we're actually going to see her do a quick, cute tour of the Free Cities. We went through a handful on the way over to Dothrak, right? Like you have the forests in Qohor and all that.
And Tyrion shows us more in the Volantis.
Yeah, so we've seen them very briefly, and I think that there's something really great about having those several POVs, right? Like having Tyrion and Dany, and who knows if Barristan will live, die, whatever he does. Him too, if he's there. Having these different few POVs in the same way to tell stories and things you're seeing only from Tyrion about Dany. And then what Dany's story is telling you and what she thinks is happening, that's going to be a really interesting contrast. But I think with those two POVs, we'll be able to cover like a travelogue of, and then we went to Pentos, and we did this. And you could get through the Free Cities in like 2 to 3 chapters, to be fair, with them by like traveloguing it like George likes to do. He likes to begin in the beginnings of somewhere else, like, 2 weeks ago, though, this happened. It's really fun. Sometimes it could take you out if you're like, wait, what? Now we're in last month? Okay, let's go back to tomorrow. Sometimes it's a lot, but I could see them covering some of the smaller cities and getting Pentos as a big screen, and I think she might conquer her way westward. I think she might.
And I think one of the last ones we haven't covered is your baby boy, Bran.
Yeah.
What about your perfect zombie nightmare son?
Oops. What a good boy. I'm so glad. I hope he keeps his emotions, because that's kind of a bummer, right? I don't want him to be space robot Bran anymore. I'm kind of concerned for him of like some of the choices he's going to make, besides eating his best friend. I don't think we have a choice.
We've all been there.
Yeah, poor Jojen. Rip to a real one. But I think he's going to have to deal with that loss. I think he will, with that, become more isolated from Mira, who's one of his few companions that he kind of can confide in, right? I think he is going to be a little isolated and lonely in that. I think he's probably going to come back. I'm guessing I don't know if there will be a White Cave fight, but as I think that cave is screwed. Absolutely screwed.
They mentioned the back door.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing about that back door is that it's made of oak and iron. Mm-hmm. We have a friend named Warren that would love to hear this. It's one of his favorite theories, but that door, it's said in the cave, that door is oak and iron, which, of course, you remember the great Dunk the Lunk line from The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Oak and iron, serve me well or else I'm doomed to hell. Since Hodor is technically a descendant, we've heard from George and some so-spake Martins, that he probably has a little bit of Dunk the Lunk blood in him. I mean, he's a pretty thick boy, 2 C's. Hodor holding the oak and iron door, saving Bran, kind of filling the Dunk the Lunk and Egg the Unlikely, because Bran the Unlikely is a big thing. That's a great parallel that George might be playing with, right? To have him be the Dunk the Lunk of that and give his life for Bran, for the hero on his hero's journey to get back home or get out. I do think that we're going to get a lot of visions from Bran. I think it's going to be in and out of having visions and in and out of real life, which will be really, they'll feel really discombobulated, I think, from that kind of level, which is good. I think that's a good way to display him, to kind of understand where his arc might be going, that we might not get little baby boy Bran anymore in all the ways that we were.
Yeah, he'll be detached. There's the Doc Manhattan comparison, or Gandalf after he comes back, and it's just a little different than the way it used to be, and you're operating on a different substrate and not seeing things clearly. The one vision he has early on in the first book, that might just be how he is in terms of how he looks at the world. It all becomes shadow puppets and signs and symbols. And in terms of other Starks on the way back, I remember the first panel I ever went to at Ice and Fire Con when I came here 5 years ago. And it was you and Wendy and Elena. And I asked, so how do you think Arya's gonna get home in the books? And you were like, On a boat?
On a boat? I don't. Yeah, there aren't. She's not gonna hide
That's how I
on
know.
a dragon. Like, what do you think she's gonna do? I don't know. I think that the Faceless Men, quite obviously, as we know who the hell she is. We see the Faceless Men attaching themselves to other POV characters now that probably are manipulating them for their gain to kind of add to their plots. I do think Arya is probably going to get herself into some trouble because she hasn't really been following their rules very much. Recently, she killed an asshole named Darian, if you know him. Screw that
And
guy.
that got her blinded.
Yeah.
Killing Raph is probably going to get her in more trouble.
Yeah, killing Raph, that's right. Oh my god, yeah. Mercy is a crazy chapter. That was like, if you want to know the tone for Arya in The Winds of Winter, read the released TWOW chapter of Mercy, because shit's getting a little wild out there in Bravos. You know, we've got some plays, we've got some murder. I think she's going to work toward her list. I think she wants to go home. I think she's not going to be very accepted with the Faceless Men when they're like, you got to stop killing people that we didn't tell you to kill. Like, that's literally against the job.
The whole thing.
But they also gave her free training, so now it's like she has, like, you know, an associate's degree under her belt, right? In facelessness. She, like, has done her little Jedi
Valuable
montaging.
internship.
Yeah, valuable internship. Not paid, but, you know, I mean, paid in
Room
value
board.
of morals, yeah. Room and board.
Student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy.
Hey, they've been extended by the
They
Iron
teamed up with the
Bank.
Iron Bank and
I think she'll want to go home, though. I do think that she will come, because right now she's just rejecting her identity, or trying to, but it's at the edges, it's seeping in. Everything about her family is seeped within her. Like, she misses them, she wants to go home and protect them. She might have to, unfortunately, battle her way home. I do think she'll probably not be able to leave Bravos easily.
well, there's Justin Massey coming to town, and he might be carrying Jane Poole in tow, which would be a perfect meetup, given that she's going by the name Arya Stark.
Yeah.
It could be better to shock her out of her identity crisis than someone else with her name.
Yeah.
That could be her ticket home.
Do you think, with that in mind, do you think, there are some theories about it, I know, that would be like a only death can pay for life situation?
Where she kills Jane?
I've heard, like, Jane dying is someone people think would happen, which I hate that. I think Jane should go on a cruise. She should tour the East. She should bring a lot of sunscreen, you know, live a good life. But she could die. Anyone could die. It's anyone's Game of Thrones.
That fits Arya.
Yeah. That'd really suck if she had to kill Jane Poole.
Shouldn't have called
But
her
she
horse
probably,
face
yeah,
all
she
the times.
don't call me Horseface. You thought Is There Gold in the Village was a crazy chapter. Ooh, Arya versus Jane. I don't want that for Jane. But some people have theorized, like, maybe Jane will go and ask for the gift. Maybe she'll be like, yo, my life sucks. Can I get the gift? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's in
There's
George's
Ramsay's
wheelhouse.
kid. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I kind of forgot about Ramsay. Hate that guy. We hate it here.
It's true. Well, yeah, we'll be happy when Ghost tears him apart, though.
Yeah, I would love that.
Clapping and cheering, feel good scene.
Hell yeah. See, cannibalism could be good. I guess that's
Exactly.
not cannibalism, it's doggalism or whatever, but doggabilism. Details. So overall, what do you think is the biggest thing you're looking forward to? Or the thing, besides Eldritch Apocalypse, that's
Okay.
not fair. You already
Can't
got
count
that
that.
one.
Can't count the end of the
You-
world.
Anyways, besides that one, what is the one thing that you're very sure of that you're looking forward to, besides Garland Terrell dying?
The writing for Stannis burning Shireen has to be so good. And I imagine that probably from Melisandre's POV. And I think that could be fascinating to witness how she compartmentalizes the horror of it and how she justifies it to herself, and whether that breaks down in the moment or whether she's a true believer all the way through it. I think that has the potential to be a real skin-crawling scene, especially if it does happen in the Night Fort, because that's such a murderous location.
Horrible things have gone on there.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible
So
things.
that would fit real well. I think I'm definitely interested to see Varys come back to the fore. There's that great bit in the epilogue to dance after spending all of Feast Dance off the page. He finally comes forward to kill Kevin and Pycelle and give us his big Batman villain monologue about what he's going to do next. So, his character he's always putting on a front. So seeing him finally drop that, I think, would be really cool. What about you? Oh, and Marvin the Mage will show up and do some
Crazy shit and die. Yeah. Go out in a
That's
blaze
up
of
there, too.
fire. Rick from Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
Yup. I would be excited to see that too. I mean, obviously I'm very excited for the one very canon ending coming at the very end of A Dream of Spring, where the gift is resettled and Sod the Starkest Queen in the North. But we don't have to talk about that today. We've talked about it this weekend, you guys. I think I'm most excited for Stark reunions, right? I'm very sure Stark reunions are coming, but also for the conflict in the Stark reunions because they're all coming back very traumatized, having gone through very different things. And I'm excited to see how George kind of writes them, not just buddy-buddy, you know, like the actual real conflict, not just like, I'm mad at you because Littlefinger's here or something or whatever, and not speaking to one another or speaking to their CCTV brother. Like, I'm really glad to see him actually write conflict and kind of also seeing them manage and do real administrative things and actually have to run the household with maybe a war council joining and things kind of starting. I'm excited for a lot of the war council dynamics, you know, in general. The Starks.
Sure, Daniel have all her counselors, Marwyn the Red Priest, the Tattered Prince.
Yeah, the Blacks, right, yes. And then the Greens, Aegon, and his little group of the Dornish with them. And I'm excited to see Arianne Martell in councils with Jon Con. There's going to be some arguments there, and she's not going to stand down, I don't think, and he's going to hate that, so I cannot wait to see her in his chapters. That's going to be cool. That's cool. Yeah, those are my big ones. I mean, I'd just like the book, please. Please, can I have the book? Please?
We'll have to just write everything down we said here, and we'll just release it under the name Winds of Winter.
Yeah, a little check mark, you know,
exactly.
next to each.
Just open it up, and it's just a box.
Yeah. We have a handful of minutes left. We can take some questions from you guys and chat about some stuff. Lo?
Okay, so considering apocalypse in Old Town, how fucked is Marwyn's study group and like Sam, Gilly, Alaris, Lazy Leo can get fucked. I'm fine with that. Like the rest of them, I kind of want to clear.
Hopefully the fact that they're into all that Eldritch stuff already will be useful to them, or they'll be able to pick up on stuff happening and run. But yeah, I love that Marwyn has just acquired little dangerous people wherever he goes, that he taught Qyburn and taught Miri Mazdor and Lazy Leo, and he's a faceless man hanging out in his study now. But yeah, Sam and Sorella strike me as probably the likeliest to get out of that mess alive, and Gilly, she's still in the city at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we're losing Sam as a POV, just because he's really useful. I think he's part of Endgame, and I think he's useful for having our eyes on Highgarden and the Reach and that whole area. So I do think he makes it out, but probably just by the skin of his teeth, and probably with a couple people with him at most.
I think Alaris is like, Sorella is the only sand snake that's going to survive. Those little ones are probably going to die, horribly, tragically, sadly. The other three, probably going to die. I think Sorella is going to be the ruler of Dorne in the end. I think having a bastard female ruler of Dorne, or genderqueer ruler of Dorne, really, you know, going between these two, and also someone who studies at the Citadel, right, and actually learns some of these mysteries of life, and doesn't just do that just to get the chain necessarily, but is actually there and learning. Those are good things to learn. Like, more lords should know more than that. They shouldn't just be like, taxes, please. You should also know things and try to improve, I guess, the world around you, right? And I think we're going to see a lot of the very end rulers. They'll all be probably really lonely and bittersweet endings and, you know, isolated, but I think they're going to be some of the best rulers for the job and have the most experience of actually seeing the world in a bigger picture lens. So I think Sorella will survive for sure. That Lazy Leo's gonna die, absolutely. But maybe he'll try to like redeem it a little, he'll hunt it a little, make you almost like him, you know. But Lazy Leo's probably outie. I would be really excited to watch Pate and Sam face off somehow. Like Pate show some ulterior motives, and Sam have to maybe accidentally slay him. Another one bites the dust. Oops. That would be cool.
Already killed another. Should kill a faceless man too.
Yeah, add it to the list. Add it to the resume. Yeah, I definitely think that Sam will get out. They might run though. I think they'll have to run.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Okay. So I'm really fascinated and really excited for the different types of magic we're going to see. Like, we've gotten some insight into Euron's magic. We know that the glass candles are lit again. We know the high towers are doing something. Like, they're opening their books, they're dusting out the old spell books and everything. But I'm wondering, one, like, how do you think the two different types of magic, because the first one we're really going to see is going to be like the high towers versus, you know, the Ironborn and the Reach, as you talked about. But also, I'm wondering, how do you think those two types of magic are going to differ? And then also, what kind of ramifications are they going to have? Because Westeros has been pretty dormant on magic until very recently. Like, they've kind of been throwing a lot of it away. But we know that the Faith is going to have a lot more struggles going forward. We know that, like, obviously magic is waning in the north. We know Dany's coming over. She has her dragons. There's a lot of magic and prophecy surrounding a lot of these people. We have a ghost in Highheart. We've got, like, people springing up with real prophecy more and more lately. And I'm wondering what kind of ramifications you're going to have that over the overall, like, culture of Westeros overall as a result of all these blowouts with all this different magic.
I think Old Town is probably just going to be a disaster zone in terms of all that stuff going off very poorly and spilling out of control. I think but it's also useful because it's a place where you can do a lot of exposition because you have access to a lot of records, and the show used that in terms of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and that might be involved in it, but it's that's where Sam can overtly study and talk about the higher mysteries, which just have to be kind of hinted at elsewhere. I don't think the stuff going on in Old Town doesn't really fit into the whole ice-fire dichotomy, into the Children of the Forest and the Others type magic versus Valyrian and Dragons type magic. So I don't think it's going to have the kind of long-term metaphysical impact of that kind of stuff, because the fire and ice magic also ties into the seasons and how you have long winters and long summers, and the crazier, more arcane, Conan and Lovecraft stuff. I think it's just George indulging his love for that kind of style and seeing what kind of characters and plot events he can build around it. But I think, the main impact of it is just going to be purely disastrous, because you have Bran connected to Children of the Forest magic, you have Dany connected to Valyrian magic. There's not really a POV character who's directly handling the crazier shit in the South. They're just kind of bearing witness to it. So I think it'll be mostly just something that goes boom.
I will, a minor objection. The one thing I do think is interesting that Marwyn points out is that when he talks about the Valyrian Dragon Lords, how they only use dragon magic or blood magic. And there is still, even with the ice in the north, right? Like, there's still something about death for life going on there. Mm-hmm. So I do think they're all pulling from the same pool, if that makes sense, of magic. Like, I do think there's something in common across all of the magics that were being displayed in Westeros. Look at glass candles and how clear you can just change a channel and see Sam's entire life story, for example, that Marwyn knows it all, though he can't see the faceless man living in his house. Okay.
Or he just doesn't care.
Yeah, or he's like, I'll deal with that later. Right? Yeah. But like Melisandre has visions, right, that she interprets from the fire, and it's kind of like she's looking at it and it's just a little blurrier, right? Like she has to go get the bunny ears tuned on the TV real quick. So it's almost like I feel like a lot of this comes from a lot of the same magic, but it's just all different interpretations or uses of it, and people actually channeling that magic in the different ways they've learned to figure out how to use it. And it feels like the White Walkers, as we've gotten the others have a little bit of that back magic we've kind of gotten in the show, some reasoning for, or, some things that may or may not be true. But they do convert life to death, life to death life.
No, I definitely think that cycle is essential to all of it. I just think I think the Valyrians and the Children of the Forest, that's pretty foundational to how he thinks about this world and this story. Yeah. And the more trippy arcane stuff, I think, is icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important, but I don't think it's as central to this overall world as the icing stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Mostly, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I removed my minor objection.
Straight from the record.
Okay.
What time we got?
We got 1 minute, so maybe one last question.
Okay. Now, as I remember, when Jon is stabbed, Selyse and Melisandre and Shireen are still at Castle Black.
That's true.
My question. I think that Melisandre is going to burn Shireen to bring Jon back. Do you think Jon will see this or know what resurrected him? And how much of the wolf will stay with him once he's human again?
That's a good question. I think I lean towards Stannis being the one to make the call with Shireen personally. And Melisandre, I think, will definitely be the one lighting the fire and encouraging him to do it. But that question of sacrifice is something that's weighed heavily on his choices. That came up so heavily with Edric Storm. So I do think he'll be involved in that. But I do think Jon will have a definitely conflicted relationship to however he's brought back. And I do think he's going to have some difficulty making the full translation in a way that will, I think, make him more kind of dashing and Byronic and, a misunderstood anti-hero in the Jaime vein that I think will play into Dany finding him attractive. Because I think that's part of it.
Now, don't we have a time limit?
In terms of when you can bring Jon back?
Well, Thoros said that Catelyn had been dead too long. After 3 days.
She was in the water, though. If they put Jon on ice, literally,
but
they might preserve him.
Is 2 weeks right away.
True.
So,
Yeah, I lean against Shireen being used for Jon in that way, for that reason in part, but also just because no one actually died to bring Beric back, like that first time, and who knows what the rules are.
he's still dead. He's moving, he's talking, but his blood doesn't flow, he doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, he's not really breathing. He's not alive.
Sure, well, we'll see.
John
what
likely
position
won't be
Jon is in.
there, I think.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think timeline-wise, it just won't work for Shireen to die that early on. I think we got to have John back probably the first quarter to middle of the book at latest to really. I mean, you can keep your protagonist, your anti-hero now. Sorry, you can keep him out for a little bit of the book, but John has a big role, especially when you think about where Winterfell is going to be, where the Wall is going to be, as far as what's going on at it after Stannis wins his battles right on ice, and. John being on ice is something kind of proven. Aemon would have died if he hadn't been in the North preserved by the cold, he thinks, right, as a dragon. So I just think Shireen can't die that early if she's burnt, and I don't think it might not necessarily bring him back. I don't know how he's going to be brought back. I think it's going to be something different, though, and maybe something to do with some of the magic we've been talking about, some deeper magic.
And John's mind will be in ghosts, so he's not going to lose his memories and his thoughts. That's how you preserve that.
He just might be a little wolfish.
He has a cooler for his brain to go in.
Yeah,
exactly.
a cooler.
Offside storage.
A
It's very
furry
handy.
friend to think for him.
Always back it up to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, because there
Learning
is
valuable lesson.
the great theory, right, that Robb warged into his wolf at his death, when he says ghost. Or no, not ghost, Grey Wind. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about everyone dying right now.
They all have
The
it.
Starks have a hard run. But into Grey Wind, right, him going into Grey Wind is a common theory, so I think that kind of sets the path for Jon, if that's true. Yes, Sean?
No, running out of time, but I want to follow up on a question she had. It's a year that never came to my head before. If Shireen is burned, to bring Jon back, let's say that's what happens, right?
Sure.
What sorts of pressure and obligations does that put on Jon? Does he feel obliged to do what Stannis says now, since he burned his own daughter to bring him back? Or maybe is he more repelled than ever from Stannis? You burned your daughter? Will he feel guilt over being alive at all? Will he feel obliged to Stannis at that point? I never considered that before. What do people think about it?
Probably guilt. That's a good question. I mean, it could tie into what he has in common with Tyrion and Dany, which is that their mothers died bringing them into the world. So there's that connection between your life and the death of someone else, and sacrifices made for you, which is hard because you don't have any control over that. But every breath you take is because of that. So I think that could definitely be a source of conflict.
Yeah, I think guilt is going to be a heavy feeling for Mr. Jonathan Snow. Very guilty. All book, all the time.
I mean, always.
That's literally his whole thing.
John feels guilty. Next chapter.
Yeah.
But Ghost does not.
Yeah.
Further too, like how will other people feel? I just never thought about the idea that whether Jon would even be aware of it. I didn't go that past that point. Other people, there's no way Stannis does this in secret, right? Like, if anything, Melisandre's going to want it to be a show of power.
Oh, sure.
So how will the rest of the North feel about Jon only being here because of some dark magic?
Yeah.
Or coming back at all. It's an interesting development if they, if that becomes part of his warrior legend or something to put people off.
Well, that is all the time we have, you guys. Thank you so much for coming out today. Stick around for closing ceremonies, you guys. And make sure if you guys want to follow us, I'm at Lies and Arbor on Twitter, Lies and Arbor, or follow Girls Gone Canon. Please take a listen. We would love for you guys to be listeners.
And I'm at Poor Quentin on Twitter, and you can follow the podcast at Notacast, ASOIAF.
Thanks for coming out, you guys. Stick around for closing ceremonies. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Woo! Nicely done, Fred. Holly.